By the end of day 3 of my New Zealand trip, I'd reached the Bay of Islands and stopped at a beautiful campsite overlooking a waterfall. This place was the genius find of Karen, Travelling K, who was also here in her caravan. We spent the next day touring together on a boat trip around the entire bay, looking at many of the 144 islands. This 6-hour excursion is known as the cream trip, because it started when a boat went around collecting cream from all the farmers on the islands, and over the years it turned into a tourist trip instead. For each of the main points of interest, the crew gave us detailed information over the tannoy and slowed right down so we could have a good look and take photographs. Then they'd power up for the bits in between. The bay really is very lovely indeed. I entirely failed to capture it on film, but at this tiny island there was a seal, if I remember correctly, basking on the rocks at the bottom as the waves crashed around him. Here's the Cape Brett Lighthouse, which operates on a clockwork mechanism and was first lit in 1910. Just a kilometre away from there is the famous hole in the rock, so called because it's a hole in a rock. Sometimes boats go through the hole, but not us on this day, as it was too choppy to be safe. We stopped for lunch at a beautiful island that I'm not even going to try pronouncing. There's a small hill to walk up from which to take these images. Back on the boat, we were looking for birds looking for fish, because where they were, dolphins should also be. There's one. It turns out that dolphins are awkward little whatsits to film, because they pop up at random, and just as you get your camera on them, they're disappearing back down again. And wherever you point your camera next, they will, somehow, managed to come up just in the corner of the image, almost out of shot. I think it's safe to say that David Attenborough's film crew need have no fear of me usurping their jobs. Any images I did manage to get of the dolphins were by pure luck rather than skill. This is the first time I've seen dolphins, so it was a bit of a special moment. After a few more islands, our trip was over, and I bid Karen goodbye, heading a long way south, past Auckland, to the Coromandel Peninsula. Here's the campsite where I stayed for the next 3 nights while I explored the local area. A great spot, and just $10 a night, that's about £5, with showers and kitchen available if I didn't want to cook from the back of the van. The coast road from here up and across the peninsula was great fun, so twisty, with brilliant views and many parts with a 100 km/h speed limit, which made for some interesting moments amidst all the turns. One wrong move and I'd have been finding out if the campervan could float. It was all too easy to take your eyes off the road and stare at the scenery. I chose to take the scenic route from my camp over towards the famous Cathedral Cove, just north of the also famous Hot Water Beach, which in the end I never got to visit. There are some excellent viewing spots as you take this road. And even if you don't stop, it's just as good when you're driving. Here's the beach about a mile south of Cathedral Cove, where I paused and pottered about for a bit, talking to the seagulls, before gently trekking the path to the cove, which, in the warm sunshine, was indeed a bit of a trek. Very enjoyable, though. And this is Cathedral Cove, which was reasonably busy with other folk, but not too bad. It's so named because of the cathedral-like arch in the rock, although why it's not called Another Hole in the Rock, following the earlier naming convention, I don't know. The sign did amuse me, though. That person is in deep trouble. Look up around the beach and you can see why the authorities issue that caution. The rock is not that solid. It is quite an impressive archway, though. People were posing for photos on the boulders sticking out of the sand. I think the tide was in and coming in further. I didn't fancy getting soaked trying to get to the next bit of beach. I did have a quick paddle just so as I could feel I'd really been there. Getting back, I took the short route and quickly regretted it. This is very much a gravel track, not a road, and it's astonishingly twisty and steep and narrow. It reminded me of one of those Top Gear episodes in Peru or Bolivia or somewhere like that, and the 30-mile trip took over an hour. On another day, I went elsewhere, but for the life of me, I can't remember the name of the place where I took these next shots. It was a lovely beach, but where the heck is it? If you know, please do comment below. It's driving me crazy. It's kind of crying out to be immortalised in oils or watercolours or something. For my final day before my emergency flight home, as coronavirus began to shut down airlines and airports, I went, not by the short route, to a small volcanic peak from which you can get a great view over a local beach. Isn't that stunning? Oh look, NASA appear to have lost one of their landers. I'm glad about all the viewpoints, because clambering up and down there was rather exhausting. Then a long road detour round and back to the beach I'd seen from the top. It was my last day in New Zealand, assuming I'd be able to make it home, so I took a leisurely walk in the sunshine, breathing in the fresh air and resolving one day to come back. As luck would have it, I did make it onto a flight, and there's a link to the tale of how I did in the description below. It wasn't as straightforward as it sounds. That's it for this one. Cheerio.